We're live. So am I starting?
Yeah.
Welcome everyone. Let me do my hair. Welcome everyone to this week's Design and UX meeting. We are recording this and streaming it live. Oh, and I...
So there's
Please.
a setting, there's a
There we
browser
go.
setting
Yeah.
that lets you decide whether video will autoplay or not in YouTube. And I have mine set to autoplay in one browser and not in the other. So depending on like any given day where I happen to start the meeting, it'll autoplay or not. But if you can figure out which browser it is, which is usually my problem, you can usually turn that off.
Well, to anyone who's puzzled what just happened, the live stream of YouTube started playing in my background. And we got a very long delayed echo, which was not helpful. So let's try again. We are live streaming this, which is what I was about to say. So if you don't want to be on camera, please turn off your camera. But we love to see your faces and we love to hear your voices. If you're watching the video of this, please consider coming in the future to our live meeting and joining us because everyone is welcome. Now, the agenda, I guess we're going to start with our introductions. Let's start with quick introductions, just your name, something about yourself, and then ask the next person in line or call on someone else to come after you. I will go ahead and start. I'm Tim Erickson, coming to you from Deerwood, Minnesota, and my habit lately has been to give the wildlife report outside my window, and it's quiet right now. The turkeys went by a little while ago, but they're gone. Backdrop wise, I'm just swamped, so I can't decide what to talk about. Gregory, go next.
Hello, please excuse any noises. There's some noisy cooking happening in the background. I'm Gregory. I'm joining from Greece, usually in Australia, but COVID. I haven't joined the last 1 or 2 weeks in any of the design or developer meetings, and I haven't gotten the chance to watch any of the recordings, so I'm joining just to catch up and help any way I can. Jen?
I am Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. I don't have any exciting wildlife outside my window, but there are a lot of exciting things going on in Backdrop land right now, and I don't know if we're going to talk about them all in today's meetings or not, so I just want to highlight the fact that Tim made a fantastic survey that's going out, and so if anybody wants to weigh in on which features you feel like are most important for future versions of Backdrop, you're welcome to go to survey.backdropcms.org and complete that. We are currently working on getting an events website together for Backdrop Live, which is coming up in March. Keep an eye out for that. A whole bunch of people are doing a bunch of work on documentation, which is really exciting. And of course, there's all the stuff that's going on in Backdrop Core. Yeah, a lot of really exciting stuff going on. And I just want to take a minute to thank everybody for all of their continued work on all of the cool stuff. Phil, are you here? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Phil Ward out of Wichita, Kansas. I guess nothing exciting to really say about me. Just kind of here to see where I can help if possible and go from there. Tim, or I guess whoever's leading, let's go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, that's everything. So, excuse me, I got a bit of a cough today. The next thing on the agenda from the template here is the theme initiative update. Luke is not with us today, and I have been communicating with him quite a bit, but I don't recall any updates since last week, and I think he did give a pretty good update last week. So I don't know if anything's new has happened there, but I know that Luke continues to work on the sort of theme initiative update. Yep, nothing. I think nothing else there. So, oh. Yep. Okay. So we move on to the product, the design, UX and design issues. And should we just move through this list quickly? We have cleaned it up a little bit lately. So it's, I haven't checked all of these issues in advance to see where they're at or if anything's happened in the last week. The promoted modules themes on installer. Do we have any news there? Anybody?
No, there hasn't been any movement lately. We generally decided that this is a good thing to happen, and so we can promote things without having to add them in core, and solicit people testing that certain modules like the
Okay.
relations one, soliciting testing so that they can get faster into core, but no activity lately.
There
Well-
has been some related stuff going on. You know, Doc Wilmot is trying to get a test site set up where he can do some work on project module. And though that is not directly related to this issue, having an environment where we can test project module would make this move forward faster. So I think that will help, that will benefit if we can get it figured out.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Well, I'm just, I mean, I agree, and that's exciting that there is other stuff happening, but I also would like to make the sort of meta point that the last update on this issue is May 2019, the specific issue, and we might want to look at thinning some of these off the agenda until they get some action again. The next one is the move the clear log messages button to the bottom of the deep log. How about this? This is the one that I think,
Yeah, the one
we
that
have
was
just-
proposed to go to be
yeah,
team-
to go to the PMC. Is that still, is anybody involved in the issue? See any reason why that's no longer true? Is any a surprise consensus emerged in the last week?
Nope.
No, okay. I didn't think so.
Did we have
What?
is there a PMC issue for that already?
No, there's not. I think Peter asked about that in the last week. He's like, how's this coming in the PMC? And I sort of fessed up to the fact that it's not, that we really need to get it going. And I think all it needs is a PMC member to create an issue for it, right? So just anyone, my understand, I am a member of the PMC, but this is the first time we've ever done this, is that I know of. So, but my understanding of the process right now is that basically any member of the PMC can open up an issue for this. Sort of like in the core issue queue, the PMC sort of requires that somebody advocate for an issue, and they sort of move the discussion along. And I think that's what's waiting right now. And I'm pretty sure the only reason nobody has done that is just that we're all swamped, because I have been thinking about getting that issue created and I just haven't. And if Jen doesn't beat me, Jen or Gregory doesn't beat me to it, I will try to get this issue created. Part of my hesitancy in doing it is I feel like I have to reprocess the issue in my head and understand it before I open it. I mean, and Peter did a great job of summarizing it, which is really going to help that process. So
One thing
Go
I
ahead,
think
Jen.
would help too, you mentioned, Tim, that this is the first time that we've escalated a contrib issue. I'm
Mhm.
not sure that's true, but I don't think we had a formal process for escalating the contrib issue. I think we just had like open issues in the PMC queue and talked about stuff. But I was looking at our issue templates. What might really help this is if we had a PMC issue template that was specifically for escalating a contrib issue that would outline like what we need to know as a PMC member reading the issue, and might help us pull that stuff out of a contrib issue and make the process less painful going forward. So I might take a stab at creating that. Maybe if I could get you to use it when you go to create the issue, we could test it and see how effective it is, and if that's going to help us going forward.
Sure. Sounds good. Did you just go ahead and remove that previous item already from the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually moved it up to the theme initiative section, but
Oh, okay.
I made it a
That's
sub issue, so I don't have to talk about it.
fine. So let's make notes, a little better notes about what the next steps are. So next step for this one, the deblog one, is a template in the PMC issue queue for elevating issues. ELE.
Elevating or escalating.
You just edit it. I don't care.
Which is actually the thing that the sentiment for like all people involved in that issue is like there's more interesting, like we do want to find a solution eventually, and it's something that it annoys people on one way or the other, but there's more exciting things to be working on. So
okay, I'd love it for people to help out maybe, and let's keep some notes in here about what the next steps are. So I roughed something in, but feel free to improve on that. Let's move on to the next issue. Rename the locale module. Is there any progress on that one? I'm opening it up. I don't think this is one I've been following real closely. Looks like no updates for the last, since August of 2020. So I'm going to suggest, unless somebody has something important to say, we move on. Sort available updates page 4575. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one minor thing. The link to the agenda on Zulip points to the one from Gen 14. So
Darn it.
yeah, I don't see any. Jen, can you please? Because
Can
I'm
you
not
fix
seeing
that?
the updates.
Yeah, we have one for today, and it's dated properly. So if the one you're looking at says the wrong date, that was my screw up.
Yeah, no worries.
I had both of them open when I was doing it, so I must have copied the wrong link.
I can let that.
Thanks.
The available updates page gets noisy with too many projects. Wait, what am I looking at? Yeah, the sort available updates, 4575. Has this one had any updates lately? No. Well, December 2020, so a little while back. I would say that there's not enough movement on that right now that we need to talk about it unless somebody else has a question. I did add a couple of new ones coming up here in a minute, so we will have a few issues to talk about, and hopefully others have other ideas. Clean up page title block. Let's see if anything's happening there. Nope, not since September. So I went ahead and stuck two on the agenda that have been getting some talk, and I don't think we've talked about them in a meeting yet. So, well, one of these has a PR, but they're somewhat related. The first one is Olaf has brought up this issue about a new hidden path content type. And that one is getting a lot of attention right now. In part, let me just sort of jump ahead and say this sort of came from, emerged from, I mean, that idea has been floated on its own, but it came up recently because of the next one, which I opened, which was the idea of replacing the current promoted content block on the front page of sort of the default layout with a node that, with a node. And Olaf, when he saw my issue, said, well, I'd love to have a hidden path content type, which if we were to replace the promoted content with a node, we could use this new content type for that. So that's sort of the relationship between them. But I think we can talk about them independently because they both stand on their own. And I just wanted to see, there seems to be a lot of interest in this idea of a third content type by default. But I'm not sure how strong it is, or if I don't know.
Yeah. So
Jen, you've only weighed in marginally on this issue. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I'm not sure it's an 80% use case. I feel like maybe 50% of the time do I use that on any of the sites that I build. So it makes me a little hesitant to put it in core. I feel like it would be really helpful as a learning tool for people who would need to know how to do that. But I'm also a little bit worried that it's going to be in the way for those 50% of sites for people who don't need it, and they'll just have to remove it. That said, removing things is a lot easier than adding them. So I'm sort of like on the fence about it. I added a label to that issue, needs usage metrics. I think this might be really helpful if we could check and see how many existing sites have enabled a pathless content type at all. That might help inform that, because maybe it's more than 50% of sites have used it.
I think that's one of the use cases, sorry to interrupt, Jen, where because the feature is not common, it's commonly understandable, I should say, people don't use it. So the metrics, I'm not sure, so the goal for this issue is to make it easier for people to understand that that feature exists and how it can be used. The fact that it's not being used might not be, users metrics might not help as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
People just might not know they can do it yet. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I strongly believe that most users would be completely unaware of this sort of as an option. And I think the reason both of these issues have come up is that we've been getting a fair number of people asking to do something like this and not understanding how and being confused. And like that's the motivation sort of for adding a node to the front page was that we've had, I would say it's like one of the most frequent questions I've run into in the last 6 months is people being confused about how to make a custom front page. And so my suggestion was to put a node on the front page because people just aren't getting that they can do that. And this would make it easier. And then I think for a similar reason, this out of the box content type came up because it was like, well, yeah, if you're going to create a node on the front page, using a hidden content type is a great example, but people don't know that.
Yeah.
And so both of these were motivated partly by the desire to educate people, but you know.
Yeah. I think there's probably some other stuff we can do though that would help.
Sure.
Cleaning up the text on that checkbox is something that we've intended to do since it went in. It's just a hard thing to explain in text
Right.
on a checkbox.
Exactly.
I'm not sure that building something that most people need and putting it in the way is the right solution to this problem. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on it. So
Yeah.
I don't feel strongly either way.
So I had some time available. When was it? Actually, yesterday. Giving the time difference because I'm referring to Australia and my colleagues there 2 days ago. I solicited the help on the company that I work for, like Slack, and I was being very vague with the way that I was asking things, so not to lead people towards with regards to what answers they gave. And I sort of like vaguely explained that I need a name or a use case for things that should not be accessed individually, but when they form a group, with like in the context of building websites, of course, always. And I solicited help with regards to naming that and how people would sort of like what they would use it for. So, and I got answers from front enders, developers, project managers. So both people that build sites, but also people that don't, and a UX expert as well. So she had a comment on the second paragraph of that, the second sentence of that help text. Said that it was confusing, but she didn't have a suggestion at the moment. She would come back.
Mhm.
So yeah, the mere fact that we have a huge chunk of text there explaining what it does, sort of like hints that it's a difficult thing to explain or use as well.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't know that we're going to solve anything in this today, but I felt like it were worth talking about in a discussion because there's a lot of discussion going on in GitHub.
Yep.
And I would encourage other people to join into this discussion because this is one of those that it's right now it's less a technical discussion, more so is should we do it? And I raised another question, which I don't have an answer for myself, which is that obviously, to me at least, it's obvious that we want to limit the number of default content types for some of the reasons Jen mentioned. And so if we were to add a third one, is this the right one to add, right? And I think that's worth discussing. So far, nobody's come up with a better suggestion. So
yeah. So in terms, I'll reiterate what I said on that issue. With regards to adding value to the product and making things easier, a commonly used thing is building slides, but that's very hairy. Like I predict that would need a third-party library, so it's not a good use case when it comes to overhead of maintaining things.
but we have
I liked Olaf's sort of like use case of just a contact, sort of like a thing that can be used as a snippet or whatever we end up calling it, and putting it on the side, just a contact us block or whatever.
Sure.
Sounds like I would.
Yeah, I think there's a number of use cases. Jen mentioned FAQs sometimes, just that home page, or info blocks, right? Anytime you want to create a node that you want to make it easier for the content editor to edit, you want to create a custom block, but you want the content editor to be able to edit it. This is a great use case as you just create a node for the block because it's much easier for content editors to edit nodes than blocks.
Exactly.
Yeah, or any block you want a field on, like an image
Right.
in a block, something like that. And I think that there are a lot of simpler use cases that don't require like the view, whether it's a
Sure.
FAQ page or slideshow or whatever. But again, it's the kind of thing where like I maybe added a fieldable block type on one site out of all of the sites that I built in Backdrop, even though it's a concept that's easy for people to get, I'm not going to use it. But at the same time, like a lot of the websites that I build, I don't ever use the post content type either, but it's there and I just ignore it and it's fine to ignore. So yeah, it's definitely the kind of thing where it's like, I think I added, or I think there was a label and it needs more feedback. It'll be good to see what other people think, especially in terms of what they are using on their sites. Like if they are using fieldable blocks, maybe I'm not a good example of that. Or if, you know, if there's something that would make this click better for people, like a better example would make it click like, oh, like if everybody comes and says, I want a block like Drupal 8 has it, then I think a fieldable block is the right thing to do because they're coming from that perspective of like on Drupal 8, I could do this and I can't do it. And Backdrop, I'm like, well, you can, it's different. And having an example of how it's different would be good. So yeah, I think we just would need some way to, for it to be clear from the interface what's actually happening. So if we have something called a custom block and something called a fieldable block, people are going to be really confused about what the distinction is between those things too. So yeah,
unless we call that custom block a custom text, but again, we can add images, I don't know, in the WYSIWYG for custom blocks. So it makes it a bit, yeah. What I found interesting was one of Tim's last comments in that queue where we were saying to add sort of like, if we are to do this, we should add something that adds value to the product. And something that to this day has not been done in Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 is which made a great difference in Backdrop were the drop-down menus. So we were contemplating on whether we should add it or leave it in contrib, and it makes a really good, like a strong feature out of the box. That's why I mentioned the slides, which is something that people can do it. They can they can install the contrib modules that do it, but I don't know, maybe that could be solved with a how-to or a blog post. Yeah, anyway.
I muted myself. Jen, I think so like my question, one reason not to do this would be that there might be a better content type that we needed. I think what you were alluding to is another reason maybe not to do this is that there might be a different, better solution for like, so are you suggesting that like fieldable blocks would be different, but fulfill the same role as this? And if we were to actually add fieldable blocks, we wouldn't really need this.
Well, it's the same technical solution. Like it's both a node, it would just be a node type called fieldable block.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so it would sort of bridge that difference between people would be like, hold on, this is a node. Why is it called a block? And it might like make that connection for them. But yeah, it's the same thing. It just, I don't know what the use case is that would be the most helpful here.
So what Jen was saying is connecting the dots between for people that are coming from D8 and they're looking for that feature. It can be done. It can be done differently, but how can we hint that in a way that is intuitive and easy?
Yeah, I hear that. When I hear the term fieldable blocks, I immediately jump to a similar but different type of entity.
Yeah. And that I think that's what Drupal 8 does, right? It's the similar but different. But so that's why I was thinking if we can use that name,
right? It
might they'll see it in the node type list, and it might help. But it might also be really confusing because they'd be like, "Why is there a block in the node list?" I don't get it. So I don't know if it's useful.
So another. Oh, go ahead.
A crazy idea is that if people coming from Drupal 8, when they try to add blocks, they try searching fieldable. We have dummy results returned, which are not blocks, and say, are you looking for fieldable blocks? This is how you can do it, and link to documentation to do it. But it sounds a bit hacky and, you know.
So I'm going to make another point, which is, and it might address my concern, which is like, if there were a different solution that we might be implementing later, one of the things about adding a content type to core is it is just part of the install profile, right?
Right.
So it could be removed easily, and it isn't, it never affects existing sites. I mean, I think we want to be hesitant about dropping things in and out of the default install profile. But on the other hand, we don't need to feel like our hands are tied, like if we add it, that we can't remove it. Is that true? Does anybody disagree with that?
We can remove it without affecting all sites, but it feels odd
Right.
to be adding and then removing features. We need to make a decision.
Well, yeah. I mean, we could make a decision that we never want to do that. I would be opposed to that decision. I would say we'd be very cautious about doing it. But
Yeah.
let's roll into the next one just quickly too, which is, I think, in a similar status, which is just something under discussion right now, but because these two they overlap in a lot of ways. They're both just changes to the install profile. They're both kind of intended to help people see what's possible. And that is that removing the promoted content block and replacing it with, I guess the removing the promoted content block is less sure. And the idea was to put a node block on the front page as the primary content, and with a note saying, here, you can edit your front page by editing this block or this node. The removing the promoted content was sort of assumed, although the biggest objection, I think, to this idea is that we're removing the one visible view, which people also like to expose. So
I also think there's some value in having something familiar to people. And if you're coming from any version of Drupal, you're used to seeing that river of nodes on the homepage. Right. And if we take that away, the thing where people are like, okay, I know that if I promote a node, it's going to appear on the homepage, and then I have to figure out how to undo that. I mean, maybe everybody does figure out how to do that, but at least it's a known to start with. But if you start with Backdrop and you're like, okay, well, there's nothing here that is familiar to me, that might also be a problem. So that's a little concerning for me too. It's just making it less familiar.
Well, the less hardcore option would be, instead of replacing the block, adding both blocks or figuring out a way. Yeah.
That's kind of where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can have a node block and a view provided block, which the node block would be a welcome message or whatever, which they can remove. And the stream of content, as you said, the listing can be after that, as in recent comments or recent content or something like that.
Right. I mean, I hear your point, Jen, but I mean, to me, like, the value of having that stream on the front page is a little bit speculative. I can see where that might be value, whereas this is something that we're getting really hard. Like, we've had several questions in the forum. It's coming up repeatedly that people don't understand how to add a front page block.
I think that's a different problem, though. I think, like, I don't understand how the front page works. It's very different from, I'm going to put something on a thing I don't understand that's different from the other thing that's on the thing that I don't understand. I am not sure that changing the things that are there on the thing that nobody understands is going to help very much with the thing that nobody understands. But I do think that there is value in adding a static text node to the homepage, because if people want that, having it done for them is going to be valuable. Okay. I think there's other things we can do to make that homepage thing better, the homepage scenario better. And I was in the middle of creating some follow-up issues too. I think there's some very simple things, like if somebody makes the front page not the front page, we disable the homepage layout. Just like stuff like that we can tell from configurations what is intended, and we can make the interface more accurately reflect that. And then also having clear indication of like which layout you're looking at from the front end on the back end. We've had a long-standing issue about that. Like, how do you get to edit from the, how do I know which layout this is to edit? So yeah, I think there's a bunch of other stuff we can do to make this homepage scenario better. But I do like this suggestion here, regardless of I don't understand my homepage problem.
Well, I don't disagree with anything you said. I mean, there are certainly other ways to make this all better, and we need to consider them. It's only one way to help people. But since there's at least interest in exploring, and I think we're far from deciding this yet, and possibly doing both, I played around a little bit with how to make that work, and I'm kind of stuck. Like, what would the front page look like with both? And so I'm sharing my screen, and I'm looking at a default backdrop site with the front page. And I'm just wondering if anybody has any quick ideas, and if not right now, later add them to the issue. But like, where would we put the?
I think this might roll into design, like we call the designer, but this is a really common thing. Like most of the sites that I build on the homepage right now, they usually have some text. It's usually a block or whatever. That's just a block of text, area of text. And then they also have a bunch of listings, and they're usually distinguished by like different colored stripes or background areas
Right.
or regions. And I think that we could do that pretty easily on the homepage. I don't know what, I would recommend putting the static text block above the river of nodes, but we could just have like a background color on it, and it might look much better than just all on the white background as it is now.
Okay. I was going to see if we can wrap up this discussion, but I was going to quickly call up the current PR, because I did mock up a. It's just not going to work. I did mock up a PR or do a PR that shows an example of. Here we go. I think we're almost there. that replaces that, and again, we don't need to. We're still considering not replacing it, but so this was the alternative idea, which was that instead of your first post, it's welcome to your site, a great place to start configuring your new site is with your homepage layout, and then it's like you can edit this node to change your front page. So that was the suggestion, and we'd love feedback for that on the issue queue. So
Quick question.
Yep.
I haven't heard anybody talk about it, and I have not run across anything. There's probably an issue on it outstanding. Has there been any discussion in the past about redoing the
contextual links.
Yeah,
the gear?
we have
Those
an
are
issue.
so unintuitive.
Yeah, we have an issue about that specifically around accessibility, because when you can't see it, you can't find it on the page. So yeah, I think Drupal 8 did a pretty good job of making those more obvious so that they don't only show up on hover. But we also had, I think, a bigger discussion about WordPress. Has like in the toolbar at the top, they have a way that you can like edit any post from the same location. We have a separate conversation about like the edit tab problem. But if we did have some like global thing like that, it would be pretty easy to be like, show me all the editable areas button. That wouldn't say that, but whatever. And we could make them all appear at once. But yeah, contextual links are not ideal for sure.
Okay. And I think in all of this discussion, some of this is going to go back into the contextual links of being able to edit that pathless node, editing blocks, etc. From my experience, I've got a guy that he's in his 60s. I've been doing his website stuff for years, and I can show him how to use those contextual links. And 2-3 days later, hey, Phil, can you show me how to do that again? I forgot. So it's not an intuitive thing for a lot of people. So anyway, I'm thinking that fixing that might resolve some of these other issues that we're running into.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yep. Okay, that seems like worth discussing. Let's move on. What else we have on our agenda? So I don't know that anything is there. None of these design issues, I think, have seen any progress lately. There was some discussion about the making changes to CSS safely. That sort of stalled, and I had proposed that might be an issue that we also elevate or escalate to the PMC. I was suggesting that we allow certain a couple week period where people can get in their ideas before we did that. We never officially sort of called for that discussion, but I don't know if it's necessary or if we should just escalate that to the PMC. Anybody have any thoughts on that? I'd be happy kicking that can down the road a little.
I think it's good if we solicited feedback from more of the community before we kicked it to the PMC.
Okay.
Maybe let's mention it in the dev meeting. I don't know if we want to put it on the forum or Twitter or some other place that we can kind of solicit feedback from people who might not already be in that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So we want to.
We need to sort it out because it's a blocker for other issues. So it's important.
Yeah.
but at the same time, as you said, we're stalled because there's two opinions, and both people that are advocating for either one of these opinions are sort of like adamant about it. As in, we all agree that it needs to be solved in a way, but the suggested solutions are not technically ideal, and that's what most people,
Right. I think what's really blocking things isn't so much the fix for this as the not knowing if there'll be a fix. Like if there's a decision, a clear decision about which direction we're going, it'll just make easier to make other decisions. Okay.
Before we move on, just a quick thing for the matter that we're discussing before with the homepage. Yes, changing blocks, but how about changing the layout to something else that has like 2 columns or a sidebar or something? Again, without affecting all the sides, because the promoted content is another form of recent content, right? So we can still have that on the sidebar and then have them, because I like teams sort of like take on, hey, here's the node, which would be the main section of the site. But if we were to keep the recent posts somewhere, we can call it like featured articles and be it on the sidebar. So we keep both things, and we keep both people happy. But
the problem though is that like the example we have in core is really short because it's not real content. But if this were a teaser, it would not fit in a sidebar. Like if it were, 2 paragraphs of text and an image, which is what it usually is. And so I would hate to want to set up the site to a way that if you just entered content, it like wouldn't work anymore.
Yes, that's what I'm questioning, whether promoted content. So basically, we want to present a use case of a views generated block, right?
In a teaser. This is also the only example of it. Well, I think taxonomy might have teasers, but yeah, a very visible example of what a teaser is.
Yeah, couldn't that be a recent block thing, which also has? Yeah, I don't know. The recent content has only links and titles and links. That's what you're saying. It doesn't have an excerpt of the actual text. Is that the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We could play around with it though. Screens are getting much bigger and much smaller, but also much bigger. We could try like a 50-50 layout and see what it looks like with 2 paragraphs of text and an image on a big screen. And maybe there's a way we could do some fancy stacking. So on smaller screens, it still ends up in 1 column, but on like the extra large screen, it splits to 2. That might, at least for first impressions for people on their computers, be better use of space. It also might help if we can get the design with the background color in there too. That might help distinguish like one from the other. Another thing too is that in this example, we only have 1, but in reality, I think this view shows 10. So if you have 10 teasers and 1 node, the difference in height is going to be really obvious. And so having the 10 teasers as the main content and something else, as not the main content in terms of like space ratio makes more sense. So yeah, I just think we need to make sure that whatever it is we come up with, we can like auto generate content and not have it look funky.
Right. Yeah. So the reason why I brought it up was because at the back of my head, I always keep so we've done a great job from the plain no content added yet, which was what D6 and D7 was giving you. We have this, which is more intuitive. It presents the features that Backdrop has, but I always have Umami as a thing which presents snippets of, I think it has a series of 3 blocks with content on the side. It has recipes, and then it has other blocks as well. So compared to that, this page, okay, compared to D7 is better, but compared to Umami, it's still plain.
Okay. Yeah. I don't like that comparison because Umami is not a startup. Umami is a sample site.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And this is not a sample site. This is a default install profile. So I don't think you can compare the two. Umami is not used in this way. That's not to say that we shouldn't have something like Umami, but if we did, it wouldn't be in replace of this. It would be a sample site.
That's what I'm saying.
I think there's value in looking at like Umami as a teaching tool and being like, what from this tool would make value in my site rather than an example site. But it is hard to, they definitely are not apples to apples.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we can't learn from Umami for our default site, but I sort of recoil at comparing them as like the same thing. Like Umami is a better version of this. It's not. It's something very different.
Not a better version, but as Jen said, you present here only you and I and people that use Drupal know that this is supposed to be like, if you add more things, they're going to be added here. If I was a newcomer, I wouldn't know that this is a view, and if I promoted content, it's going to end up there,
Yeah.
right? If there were 3 items or 2 items, they would get the idea, but now we only have 1.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We could also do a better job of explaining that too. Like we have 2 sentence here. This is your first post. You may edit or delete it. That's nice and short, but it could also say, this is your first post. It's promoted. That's why it appears on the homepage or something like that. And then people would be like, oh, I don't know. We don't explain it.
But if
Really.
there was a second one and it says, and this is another one, it would make it really obvious.
Yeah,
that this is
yeah.
what happens. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But
this is your second post. It is also promoted. It also appears on the homepage. I don't know.
Let's look at the demographics. We've got new users, and a lot of this discussion, I think, with this front page node is kind of a little bit more for experience. The current install profile is more for a new user, to kind of show them I guess just to make it easy for a new user. So, I'm going to go back to the install profiles, that if we can figure out a way of getting install profiles that you can choose between a basic, a tutorial, or an advanced type of setup.
We've already been through that at the very beginning of Backdrop.
Right.
We decided not to allow anyone that option unless they know what it is, because asking people for an install profile is the first thing you ask them before they've seen a CMS. Doesn't make any sense. So this install profile we're looking at right now needs to be that beginner install profile, and only if someone knows what an install profile is and knows they need a specific one would they ever have the option to add something different. So I think
that's
sort of
right. I guess that's where I'm coming in, saying I don't see it as being a big deal to have multiple profile installs during the install process. It's just a matter of, hey, are you new? Check out the tutorial profile.
Exactly. That's the discussion that we already had, Phil. And sorry to interrupt you, but we are looking for a way. There's another issue that says allow installation profiles to be executed after the site has been installed.
Right.
It might solve it, as in,
right.
Oh yes, I got a plain site, now I need dummy content as well, right? If we could do that, allow it to be added. There's hairy bits and things that we need to figure out, and that's why it hasn't been done yet. But there's a very, very, like one of the 2-digit or 3-digit issues, so very early issue, which says, make the installer a 1-minute installer. Adding any additional steps to the installer goes against that goal. So if you've tried to install WordPress, it's like 2 steps and it's done. Drupal and Backdrop still ask too many questions post-installation. So we have 2 conflicting goals. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And that's why I interrupted you. Sorry. Go ahead now.
Well, yeah, no, I hear what you guys are saying on that. I'm just kind of looking at it from the demographics of who's going to be installing this, a new user or an advanced user. And I guess we really just can't cater to everyone.
Exactly.
By doing what we're talking about right now. The only way to cater to everyone is to break that out into a way that they can choose different methods. So maybe it's a matter of having the install profile actually do it after they see the CMS, and that homepage is a choice of options that, hey, do you want to try out these different install profiles? And if not, just delete this thing and it goes away.
I think that option is definitely still under consideration, but it's also technically harder, and we haven't figured out how to do it.
Yeah,
right.
And the reason we're leaning that way is that what the thing you're describing right now is no longer an install profile. And that's what we have all, like an install profile happens at the time you install. And so we all landed on that same conclusion. We're just now calling it something else. Something else is also TBD. But yeah, that's sort of where we're all at, is that like we know it can't be an install profile, but we still want to provide that tool that you're talking about.
Yeah, and recipes kind of enters into this. I mean,
Yeah.
I see install profiles as being a little bit separate from recipes, but at the same time, it is totally intertwined with it.
Yeah.
So that's another piece to the whole discussion. But I don't know.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
we need to wrap up this meeting, though. Is there anything else? There's nothing else on the agenda that we really need to talk about today. Is there anything else that's not on the agenda that we need to talk about in this meeting?
Well, maybe we could shortly mention that we're sort of like working on the new documentation side, which ties into that, because some of the things that we discussed could be solved with the proper documentation. Or
Sure. Jen mentioned that briefly, but it's worth reiterating that there's a lot of work around documentation right now. And yes, that will absolutely. One of the things I keep coming back to is that very often we get stuck debating a solution to solve a problem without going back and saying, well, is this really the best solution to the problem? That really there might be just a better, different approach to solve the problem. And documentation is always a good option, at least.
Yep.
Let's wrap this up. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Oh, no, I don't want to end the meeting. We're still recording, and I'm still arguing or sorry. Somebody sing a song quick.
I'll say a joke.
There you go. Say a joke. But what am I doing?
Change your content. Backdrop.
Okay.
Um,
What?
How did it go?
Oh, there we go.
All I remember
Figured
is